everyone seems to enjoy it, and I think more and more people are enjoying the outside seating.
Nice, and I see you have your insurance is all up to date.
Correct.
You're all set. All right, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other concerns or comments or questions? You're done. Thank you for coming in. Let's see, is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Anyone else here to speak in favor? Anyone to speak in opposition? Anyone to speak in opposition? Anyone to speak neither for nor against? Anyone to speak neither for nor against? Hearing none, Mr. Vice President, do you need to keep this open?
No, sir.
Okay, I'm going to declare this public hearing closed. Would you like to explain to the gentleman what all is going to happen next?
Yes, so I should be able to vote this out of both committee and the full council on Thursday. So we're looking at Tuesday of next week. If it all passes, you should be good with your license.
Okay.
Okay,
Absolutely.
Thank you.
so thank you for coming in.
Thank you. Have a
Appreciate
good
it.
evening.
Yeah, you too. Okay, at this time, I'd like to ask our city solicitor, Mr. Robert Mangiarotti, if he could come to the podium, and he was going to, as I mentioned at the meeting in July, and he did provide some information to each of us relative to impact fees. And there was some action happening at the state level, and you should have received in your packet or in your mailbox a letter from Mr. Mangiarotti. So if you come to the podium, Mr. Mangiarotti, please.
Good evening, members of the council. It's nice to see all of you. I did distribute a memorandum. I don't think, Jeremy, did you get it?
I'm sharing with
All right, then.
Heather.
So my discussion on impact fees is going to be just a brief introduction to summarize what I've said in this memo, and then try to answer any questions that you may have. Impact fees, or exactions, as they're sometimes called, are fees that a municipality will assess against a developer who's making improvements or construction within the community, and they're designed to offset the expenses that the new development will bring to the community. And they are legal in one sense, but they're very difficult to implement under the existing statutory scheme that we have now. I think I mentioned to Mr. Conti earlier, and maybe others, that there was a bill in the state legislature that did not pass this year that would have expressly authorized cities and towns to assess impact fees, so that a planning board or a zoning board, in issuing like a special permit, would be able to look at the impacts caused by a certain development, and if you could identify what those impacts were and what would be best to mitigate them or offset them, you could make an exaction either by way of property or by a fee that would help offset the negative impacts that the new development would have on the city. However, that bill did not pass. So now we are, until the legislature takes up zoning reform, and I've been involved with a group of people who've been attempting to promote zoning reform for this and many other reasons that would modernize the application of zoning. That hasn't happened thus far, and I assume that there's political reasons for that, but it's not due to lack of effort by lawyers and planners who've been trying to modernize the Zoning Act. So then what are we left with? We're left with the common law. And the common law is broken down into really two areas that are applicable to impact fees. And the one that I think is most directly applicable to anything we do in the city of Attleboro is set forth or explained in a case called Greater Franklin Developers Association versus the Town of Franklin. And it was decided in 2000. And it's directly on point in a sense that the Town of Franklin at that time had undergone tremendous residential growth, and because of the growth potential, it anticipated more residential growth. And the town had rationally concluded that the anticipated new development would cause a strain on existing school facilities, and that school facilities would have to be acquired or constructed or improved in order to address the needs caused by new development. And they created an impact fee on any residential development, and the amount isn't that important, but it was a rational amount based upon what the town envisioned as the impact of the development on the cost of educating people, educating the children. The developers, or Developers Association challenged that impact fee. It went to court at the Superior Court level, the developers won, and then it went to the Massachusetts Appeals Court, and they upheld the trial court and said that the case, or the fee, was against the Massachusetts Constitution. And the reasoning that the court used is that under our Massachusetts Constitution, cities and towns are not empowered to create new taxes. We can only tax what the state legislature says we can tax. So we have excise taxes, we have property taxes, we have taxes that we're authorized to charge by state legislation. But we cannot create new taxes at the local level. Only place that taxes can be created is in the state legislature. The court also acknowledged that although cities and towns do not have the authority to create new taxes, it does have the authority to create fees. And there are different types of fees. There are proprietary fees. The most common one I can think of is, I have public water, I pay a water bill. The water that I use myself and my family. It's something that's particularly benefiting my house. The fees are calculated by the water department and this council actually to offset the cost of the water. That's a legitimate fee. Similarly, if you have so that's a so-called proprietary fee. So we are giving something uniquely, a service or a product uniquely to an individual. He pays us for it. On the other hand, there's a regulatory fee, so that if I decide I want to develop some land in the vicinity of wetlands, we have a right under the statute to require this person to conform to the Wetland Protection Act and the local wetland ordinance. And the cost of administering that program is borne by the filing fees that people pay. So that if I'm going to develop a piece of land near wetland, I have to file a notice of intent with the Conservation Commission. The money I pay for that filing fee is a legitimate regulatory fee because it's directly related to regulating something that is particularized to the developer, not the public as a whole. And it's reasonably calculated to compensate the planning department in the city for carrying out the regulatory scheme. It doesn't have to be exactly dollar for dollar, but there has to be some connection between what the filing fee is and how much it actually costs us to administer the Wetland Protection Act. So you've got proprietary fees and regulatory fees. Both of them are legal, and neither of them, the ones that I've described to you, are taxes. However, the court in the Franklin case said that Massachusetts case law has set out certain tests for distinguishing a legitimate fee from an illegitimate or unconstitutional tax. And in my memo, I've cited Emerson College versus the city of Boston. And I'll read it because it's a little clunky language, but for a municipal charge to be a legitimate fee, it must, one, relate to a service that provides a particular benefit to the fee payer that is not shared by other members of the society. And two, the charge must only compensate the governmental unit for providing services and cannot be collected as a way to raise revenue. So in my example that I mentioned to you before, I have municipal water. It benefits just me and my family. And what I'm paying for is not to raise revenue for the city, but to pay for the cost of running our water system. That's a legitimate fee. And if an impact fee satisfies those conditions, then it will be upheld. But in the Greater Franklin case, the Greater Franklin developers case, the court determined that the school impact fee benefit all and did not uniquely benefit the fee payers. It noted that new facilities constructed with impact fees would not be used exclusively by persons who paid the tax. So the water I use in my house, only used by me. But if they build a new school, they're not gonna keep the kids from one part of town away from it. It benefits everybody. So it doesn't have a particularized benefit that it is not shared by the city as a whole, or in this case, the town as a whole. And then the second part of the test, the court found that the school impact fee failed to satisfy as well. The court held that public schools are the general responsibility of the municipality, and that the impact fees would support that general responsibility. Consequently, the court concluded that the fee was imposed to generate revenue and not to compensate the government for a particular service. So that's the Massachusetts law, and in my view, the Massachusetts law is actually more restrictive on municipalities than the federal law. In the last paragraph of my memo, I pointed out just one case that recites the test for federal constitutionality. The Supreme Court of the United States has looked at these questions of exactions and impact fees, and for compliance with the federal Constitution, so as to not have an illegal regulatory taking against the Fifth Amendment, the government must demonstrate a rational nexus between the need for capital expenditures and the proposed development, and that the amount of the exaction must be proportionate to the impact caused by the development. So there's a rational nexus test under federal law and a proportionality test under federal law. If we in Attleboro were to impose or create an impact fee, we'd have to satisfy both the federal law and the state law. So in my judgment, it's not impossible, but you have to be very careful to have the ratepayer or the fee payer enjoy a particularized benefit. And you know, you as legislators can think about that in terms of how you articulate. What comes to my mind, for example, is that if I wanted to develop a tract of land, and that tract of land needed a water extension, and without the water extension, it would be hard for them to use the land. So in that case, there's a direct benefit by charging the developer for the cost of the water line extension. And the amount of the charge would be used particularly for the water line extension. Now, that's an oversimplified example. I've seen the draft legislation that's before the State House, before the legislature. I've actually seen other towns who have tried it, but it hasn't been challenged in court. The devil is always in the details. Conceptually, I'm telling you that you can do it, but if you do it, you have to be very careful of these constraints that I've described to you.
Any questions? Vice President Denley?
President,
Excuse me.
point of order.
Yes.
I'm somewhat perplexed this evening because we're talking about impact fees, yet there's nothing before the council, so.
That's why I had asked Bob to come down, because it was something that, this was happening at the state level. There was a lot of discussion. As you know, Councilor Conti had tried to arrange a meeting back at the end of July, and that was not possible. So back at the time of the July meeting, I had mentioned that on this evening, Mr. Mangiarati would be coming in to talk about impact fees, because I wanted him to come down and present us with general information, because I knew that something was going to be coming in at some point, right? And I thought it'd be helpful to those who are working on developing stuff to have had the opportunity, and for all of us, to hear from the research that Mr. Mangiarati had done on this particular topic, so that we would be in a better position at that point.
Sure, just a comment, I think clearly his research and information is helpful, but it's out of the ordinary, I think, for us to proceed this way when new business is introduced before the council, but it's helpful.
But
Thank you.
it's not so much that it's that much out of the ordinary. There are times when we've had other presentations, people coming down, making presentations for us that sometimes later became council business, but it wasn't before us at that time. That was number one. Number two, Again, it was almost 4 weeks ago that I mentioned that Mr. Mangiaratty was coming in for this reason. And to the best of my knowledge, nobody said anything over the last 4 weeks about the fact that Mr. Manager was coming in or any concerns they had. And yet at the same time, people knew that Mr. Conti was trying to arrange a meeting at the end of July with Mr. Mangiaratty, to which councils were going to be invited. And Mr. Conti does not have or any council cannot call for a meeting like, one council cannot call for a meeting with the city solicitor, for that matter, okay?
Thank you.
So, you're welcome. Let's see, Vice President Denley, and then, let's see, Ms. Conti, and then Ms. Hall. Still, Melissa, did you have your hand up? Anybody else? Okay. Vice President Denley.
Thank you for coming in, Ms. Mangiaratty. Think about like a homeowners association fee where, every month you pay $100 and no one in a neighborhood, it's private, but no one in a neighborhood does their lawn. So part of your homeowners association fee pays for someone to come in once every couple weeks, mow the lawn, stuff like that, trim the bushes. What if we did something, maybe we don't call it an impact fee, but there's a way to create small to medium amounts of revenue from the developers, and that money is put in an account specifically to help with the upkeep of that TOD zoning. For instance, TOD is supposed to be more pedestrian, so there might be more parks there might be more sidewalks, maybe the sidewalks are made out of brick instead of cement, maybe there are trees for beautification because that's the whole concept of the TOD is that people go there. So we take the money, whether it's a impact fee or some sort of a fee on the developer, we put it in an account in the city, and that money is earmarked specifically for repairs and betterment of that zoned TOD area. Would that then meet state and federal requirements?
I'm going to give you a lawyer's answer, which is maybe. Kidding aside, although there's been talk about exactions in this country for 30 years, the truth of the matter is, at least around here, they're done on a very informal basis. They haven't been codified in Massachusetts, as I mentioned earlier. So that, conceivably you could come up with a scheme that has a particularized benefit to the rate payer or the fee payer. And it is not a general revenue raising measure. And if you could say, it'll only be used to benefit this section of town. In the Greater Franklin case, to some extent, the drafters of the Franklin bylaw thought about it because they actually separated the fund into two districts, the north side of town and the south side of town. And the court said, it's still not enough because the community at large benefits from it. And I think the potential drawback of what you're saying is, even though I live on the north side of town, I come downtown, I use the stores, I walk on the sidewalks, I use the facilities. And so I'm generally benefiting.
Here's my question. What if it's the developers who pay?
Well, developers who pay,
they benefit.
No, again, we have to talk about it, but the developer who pays is really in the place of his future residents because he just passes it on to the buyers of that property. This introduction is just that, an introduction. I think that as you think about it and you come up with ideas, it's my task, I suppose, to the extent that the council reaches consensus on it, I'm going to try to help you make it legal and sustainable. I don't know if I can really provide a comprehensive answer to your question, but the mere fact that it's played by a developer doesn't matter. The United States Supreme Court there's a case that I cited here, I just read it today, so I'm familiar with it, where the court says, we look at the substance, not the form. You can characterize it as, a suggested payment, and then if you don't make the suggested payment, you don't get your permit. The court says, no, we're gonna look right through that. And I think anything we do in the area of impact fees, we have to be candid among ourselves about what does this really do and does it satisfy the test. And I think it's possible. I don't know whether your particular idea would pass muster, but it's worthy of conversation.
What do you think of the concept that if a developer pays a fee and then they sell it, that the developer receives that betterment because a buyer would be more inclined to buy a property that would be, more better upkept by the city, and then the buyer didn't actually pay the fee, but then the buyer receives the betterment as well, so they kind of pay the fee through their purchase of the property.
Well, I mean, as I said,
That's-
the devil's
that's
in
what
the
it would be.
details. I mean, betterments are an entirely different body of law. I have a betterment in my neighborhood because I have sewer in the street now, and I'm paying for it because I'm benefited by it. So that to the extent that you can identify a particular benefit that benefits just an area of town, we've done this with pumping stations, with sewer, and with water, and then you can just charge the people who live in that end of town. You're talking about a little bit of a hybrid on that, and maybe there's an answer there. But I'm not really prepared now to sort of give it my blessing, because I think I'd have to think about it, frankly.
So I just, this will be my last question or comment, but when I heard what Mr. Conti said, and I don't even know if we're on the same page, but I thought of it as paying upfront for your betterment, which you will receive from the city throughout the time of the TOD. So I don't need an answer now, but just let that kind of bounce around, because I think it could be something that would be minimal to a developer. We're talking 0.01% or,
Understood.
whatever, but could have beneficial, lasting impacts in the TOD zone itself.
Well, I
and
mean,
that's my
I
thought.
think it's worthy of consideration. I really don't mean, I don't want to be negative, but I don't want to, sugarcoat anything either. But no, I mean, I encourage sort of this creativity, and, to whatever extent I can help, I'll help.
Thank you.
Mr. Conti?
Thank you, Mr. President. Bob, I'm taking the high road, and I thank you for your cooperation with the council. I believe that the measure that I'll be putting forth to the council will make it into committee for study and recommendation. And I believe the president will assign it to a council who will give it due diligence to work with you to make it feasible, because I believe it is. The reality is that the city's capital improvement plan is underwater. We don't have enough funds available to us now to have a capital improvement plan that is proactive. We are forever putting out the fires in our capital improvement program, and we're not like Wellesley or Weston, where we have or Arlington, where we have a large fund that we can draw upon to take care of our capital improvements in the city. And the reality is that this impact fee is not impossible, and it is possible. It's a very tight needle that needs to be thread, and the article that I read in the Mass Bar Association, which I believe I sent to you, says that it is possible to do it, and that's what gave me the fortitude to draft the legislation for the council's consideration. I do believe that a proprietary fee for the TOD, to benefit the TOD, to create a fund for the TOD that would work in perpetuity to maintain the capital improvements in only the TOD is going to meet the test. I believe that the impact fees that we are considering are legal, and that the House of Representatives bill that they were looking at to expressly authorize cities to do this is very much in line with the thinking that's behind the new business that's coming in front of the council, and which you will help us negotiate and navigate the rough waters to implement.
Could I just comment on that last point, Richard, before? Because I actually sort of went through the same exercise in my mind. I looked at the legislation and thought about whether or not we could just create a similar measure here. And the difference now is that the legislature, under the Constitution, has the authority to allow us to do things that sometimes we can't do ourselves. So that our job, all of it, including mine particularly, would be so much easier if the legislature actually codified the right to do what is reasonable. And when they do it, then a lot of these concerns go away. If the legislature says you can do it, you no longer have to worry about whether it's a fee or a tax, because we didn't create this authority ourselves. It was given to us by the legislature. And I think that this is a nuanced issue. And as you're thinking about it, I think you've got to recognize these nuances. with all that said, I mean, I just wanted to quickly point out to you that we're not the state legislature, and as a result, we have a lot more constraints working against us.
Sure, but we don't have the luxury of time. The council has established a transit-oriented district. There are several other transit-oriented districts in the state, and we're about to have 3,500 people in Attleboro living on 28 acres of land. And we don't want to see that capital investment degrade. So the purpose of the fund, funded by the impact fees, is to perpetuate the high standard of capital that's in that 28 acres from the beginning on into infinity. So in the future, go forward 25 years, a resident that's been living in a condominium in the transit-oriented district takes out a building permit to redo their bathroom. They're gonna remodel their bathroom, and 0.5% of the cost of remodeling the bathroom goes into a fund, and that fund is to replace the streetlights or the sidewalks or the potted plants or the sidewalk that leads from the train station to their condominium. It is a fund that is similar to what Councilor Denley was referring to, that would protect the city that already has an overactive capital improvement plan that it cannot fund. That the transit-oriented district would be isolated from the capital improvement funding problems of the city of Attleboro, because they would be self-determining, taking care of their own capital improvements. So I'm eager and enthusiastic that you're looking to support the council in moving forward with this, because I think it's a challenge for all of us, and I don't think that we should wait for the state, because the transit-oriented district is coming quickly, and we are going to have something in place when it arrives. The federal language, Bob, confuses me. I'm not sure what a rational nexus between the need for capital expenditures and the proposed development means.
Well, in the hypothetical that I gave, which is a simple one, you got a development on a certain side of town, and you need to improve the public water distribution system to serve it. So there's a nexus. Development is here. In order to make the development happen, the city's gonna have to build a new water distribution system in that section of
Yeah,
town.
and that's not at all what we're talking about in the future when this gets introduced
Well,
into the
Mr.
council.
Conti, I mean, and certainly I'm not here to debate you because nobody elected me to anything, probably due to the wisdom of the voters. But I will give you my honest opinion about anything that you put in front of me. I'm not necessarily going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what I think is the law. The idea of assessing someone who lives on Wall Street an extra fee to remodel their bathroom and not assessing me on Oxbow Drive, even though I live in a public way that gets plowed and has to be maintained and tarred and so forth. I have trouble with that. So, I will be very careful in my analysis. I'm entirely respectful of the initiative that the council has a right to take. But the message from this is that it's dicey stuff. And, I'll try to, and I guess my assessment of the law is, it's not as simple as you think. And even though, in one line, and the thing is that in the Franklin case, and if you want, I can give you a copy of it, the court went out of its way to say it was a legitimate need. The need of the city, of the town of Franklin, was valid. And the court says, we're sympathetic, but need is not one of the elements. So the fact that we need enhancement to our capital budget, I don't think computes. It's not a factor.
Well, I maintain that if the impact fees are not for the development of the TOD, no monies are to be used in creating the TOD to be what it is. The dollars would only be used to maintain in the future what was put there in the beginning. So, it's another legal question that's very complicated, and we're not gonna resolve that tonight, but I appreciate you coming down, and thank you, Mr. President, for the floor.
Thank you. Councilor Hall.
Yes, thank you, and thank you, Mr. Mangiarati. I believe we do not have to be pressed for time to make a decision. I believe we have made decisions and been pressed on making decisions, and personally, I feel that unless we vet these things through very, very carefully, and I'm not gonna be forced to make a quick decision because of a TOD. I totally disagree. I don't see any connection with that. Our responsibility here is to think very carefully whether this is the right thing to do and to not make arbitrary decisions, because I agree, this is a very slippery slope that we're going down here. You know, you're talking about a homeowners association fee. This is not a homeowners association fee. And as the president of a homeowners association, it's my responsibility to make sure that every fee that gets charged to my homeowners can be related directly to what they have to pay for to operate their area. The other thing is, I look at this rational impact, and I have a question about that. Does the rational impact have to be specific to the type of development? And what I mean by that is, let's just say impact.
Well, yes, I mean, clearly, that's right. And you have to distinguish something that's a unique impact that creates a particularized benefit for a certain residence that is not shared by the municipality as a whole. That comes right out of the case law. Particularized benefit not shared by the community as a whole. So it's narrow. And so it's not impossible. I agree with the former speaker's comments that it can be done, but it can be done perhaps on a very limited basis. And again, you have to, I think, be mindful of the court's express language that this is not a revenue-raising tool. And, I mean, I think all of us in city government are always looking for ways to raise revenue, but we have to do it within the law.
And then I guess my final comment on this would be, you know, one of the things we're trying to encourage is for people to come into the TOD. I mean, right now, we can't even fill all of those apartments. And to already be coming in and saying we're gonna charge an additional fee, to me, doesn't give the right message of what we're trying to do here, and I will end my comments with that.
Mr. Denley, you had another question?
Yeah, I want to actually address one of Mr. Conti's questions with Mr. Mangiaretti here to
Okay.
make sure I'm kind of on the ball. Your question was about the federal law and the nexus, Mr. Conti. I don't believe that's your problem, because you'll be raising fees from the TOD to benefit the TOD. I think that the bigger obstacle is going to be the state law and the clarification of whether or not this is a fee or a tax, and whether or not this is something that we're actually empowered to do, along with how we are going to control and regulate it to specifically benefit the same people who pay for it. So I think there's gonna be, I mean, I don't see a problem under the federal law. I see a lot of obstacles under the state law, and I think that's where the focus needs to be when if there is to be a proposal with details, it needs to have safeguards that make sure that the money is spent specifically to the TOD, and that it's within that weird, not a tax, not a fee, or whichever one it must be, that it's set up under that exact manner, because there's clearly a nexus between taxing TOD and benefiting TOD. So if that's what you're proposing, you have no problem with federal law. You need to look at it through the state law lens and kind of rectify it there. Would that be fair, Mr.
Yeah, actually, I do agree. I mean, the general observation I made before, and I'll make it again. In my view, the state law is a much more difficult law to satisfy than the federal law. There are cases in Florida, for example, that have approved impact fees because they don't have the same state constitution that we have. So yes, I agree with you.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any other questions for Mr. Mangiaretti at this time?
Thank you for your attention,
Okay.
and I'm happy to talk to any of you about this anytime.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna go on to the reading of the mayor's communication.
August 16th, 2016. Dear municipal councilors, I respectfully submit a communication from Police Chief Kyle P. Hegney regarding the receipt of approximately $11,500 from the fiscal year 15 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistant Grant through the New Bedford Police Department and the U.S. Department of Justice. No match is required by the City of Attleboro, and funds must be expended no later than September 30th, 2018. In accordance with Chapter 1, Section 12 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro, I hereby request your honorable body to accept this grant and approve expending of such funds by the Attleboro Police Department to pay for overtime incurred from a variety of prevention and enforcement efforts throughout the community.
Public Safety and Emergency Management Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Library Director Joan Pilkington Smith regarding the need for funds for tuition and books. The library employee has been approved to take courses for the fall 2016 semester and is eligible for reimbursement according to Contract Agreement Article 21, Section 1. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body approve a supplemental appropriation of $199.60 to account public library tuition and books. Copies in your packets.
Personnel and Human Services Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Director of Planning and Development Gary Arazian regarding the donation of 2 parcels of real estate to the city for open space from John J. Cloud of A. Caponegro and Company. The 2 parcels are located off Springdale Road, more specifically Assessor's Plats 112, Lot number 46, and Assessor's Plat 199, Lot 6. Thereby, I hereby request your honorable body to accept this donation in both parcels of real estate. Copies in your packets.
Zoning and Land Use Committee, please.
I respectfully submit for confirmation by your honorable body the appointment of Brad D. Goldstein, 53 Forest Street, to fill an unexpired term on the Cultural Council. Term to expire February 2018. Copies in your packets.
Personnel and Human Services Committee, please.
I respectfully submit for confirmation by your honorable body the appointment of Kirsten Melott, 23 Perrin Street, to fill an unexpired term on the Cultural Council. Term to expire February 2018. Copies in your packets.
Personnel and Human Services Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Veterans Agent Ken Batcheter regarding the donation of services for the lettering and graphics on the City of Attleboro's Veterans Van from Greenwood Emergency Vehicles with an estimated value of $3,000. In accordance with Section 1-12 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro, I hereby request your honorable body to accept these generous donations to the City of Attleboro. Copies in your packets.
City Property and Claims Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Chief of Police Kyle P. Hegney regarding the need for funds to have the prisoner's cell door glass and locks inspected and make any necessary repairs to maintain security and functionality. Thereby, I hereby request your honorable body to approve a supplemental appropriation of $21,730 to account police maintenance of buildings. Copies in your package.
Public Safety and Emergency Management Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Chief of Police Kyle P. Hegney regarding the need for funds to cover the costs associated with vehicle repairs performed by an outside mechanic while the police department mechanic is out of work for an extended period of time. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body approve a supplemental appropriation of $25,000 to account police maintenance of vehicles. Copies in your packets.
Public Safety and Emergency Management Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Superintendent of Wastewater Paul Kennedy regarding the need to transfer funds to pay a bill from fiscal year 2016. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body transfer $2,000 from account Wastewater Enterprise Fund, Equipment Maintenance, to account Wastewater Enterprise Fund, previous year's bill. Copies in your packets.
Public Works Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Legal Secretary Allison Wood regarding the surplus items that the Police Department would like to declare surplus, and hereby respectfully request your honorable body to declare the following as surplus for trade-in or resale value and available for disposition. Copies in your packets. It's a 2007 Ford CV, 135,954 miles in poor condition. A 2008 Ford CV, 117,401 miles, poor. 2007 Ford Taurus, 91,209 miles in poor condition. A 2006 Ford Taurus, 127 miles in poor condition. And a 2003 utility trailer in poor condition.
City Property and Claims Committee, please.
Respectfully submit a communication from Senior Land Use Planner Stephanie Davies regarding the donation of 2 5-drawer steel flat files with an approximate value of $500 from Bob Rautenstrach. In accordance with Section 1-12 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro, I hereby request your honorable body to accept these generous gifts to the city of Attleboro. Copies in your packets.
City Property and Claims Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Superintendent of Public Works Lance Hill regarding the need for funding for street repairs. The Department of Public Works needs to make permanent street repairs to 3 temporary patches due to water breaks throughout the city, resulting in just under 10,000 square feet of roadway. Additionally, police details are required to complete the work. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body approve a supplemental appropriation of $47,865 to the following: $40,345 to account Public Works street maintenance supplies, and $7,520 to account Public Works professional services. Copies in your packets.
Public Works Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from City Treasurer Laura Gignac regarding the donation of 5 desk chairs with an approximate value of $500 and 3 desks with an approximate value of $1,200 from Bristol County Savings Bank. In accordance with Section 1-12 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro, I hereby request your honorable body to accept these generous gifts to the City of Attleboro. Copies in your packets.
City Property and Claims Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Legal Secretary Allison Wood regarding the need for funds to repair city property that was damaged by a motorist at the intersection of Pleasant and Emery Streets. The total repair cost is $8,027, but the driver's insurance company will only pay $5,000, which leaves a remaining balance of $3,027 needed to facilitate the repairs. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body approve a supplemental appropriation of $3,027 to account Public Works maintenance of traffic lights. Copies in your packets.
City Property and Claims Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Fire Chief Scott LaChance regarding the need for approval to issue a refund for a previous fiscal year reimbursement. No monetary transfer is required. Thereby, I hereby request your honorable body to approve a previous fiscal year reimbursement. Copies in your packets.
Public Safety and Emergency Management Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Fire Chief Scott LaChance regarding the need to pay a prior year bill for paramedic recertification fees. No monetary transfer is required. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body to approve payment for a previous fiscal year fee. Copies in your packets.
Public Safety and Emergency Management Committee, please.
In accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 31D, regarding snow removal expenditures, I hereby request your honorable body to approve deficit spending in the following accounts during fiscal year 2017. In the snow ice control account, overtime snow removal. In the snow ice account, allowance for meals. Snow ice control, maintenance of equipment. Snow ice control, snow plowing services. Snow ice control, street sweeping. Snow ice control, gasoline. Snow ice control, diesel fuel. Snow ice control supplies equipment. Snow ice control supplies salt. Snow ice control supplies sand. And snow ice control capital snow equipment.
That should make us all feel cooler on these hot days, huh?
Pardon me?
That should make us all feel cooler on these hot days. How about winter? These are, that's Public Works Committee, please.
And sincerely, Kevin J. Dumas, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other communication?
Yes, we do, Mr. President. One second. We have a request from Richard Fredette from the Disabled American Veterans Group, Chapter 91, of 122 Park Street, to hold a Forget-Me-Not Drive on Saturday, September 24th, and Sunday, September 25th, 2016.
License Committee, please.
We have a complaint from Pasquale Passi of 11 Summer Street, Apartment D, North Attleboro, Mass, about Old School Auto located at 187 Cumberland Avenue, Attleboro, Mass.
License Committee, please.
We also have a letter from Ellie Sugar of 11 Manchester Street, Attleboro, Mass, regarding the increasing installation and use of outdoor fire pits by individuals on their properties in Attleboro.
Public Safety Committee, please.
And we have a certificate of vote from Lawrence Stamatis, Planning Board Clerk, certifying that the Planning Board, at its meeting that was held on Monday, August 15th, 2016, unanimously voted in the affirmative, 5 yeas, 0 nays, 2 absent, to recommend to the Municipal Council to adopt the proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance relative to Section 17-2.1.13, the establishment of industrial zoning districts, and section 17-3.4, table of use regulations, community facilities.
Zoning and Land Use Committee, please.
And that is all.
All right, at this time I would entertain a motion to go into the Committee of the Whole.
Second.
Thank you, the motion's in order. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion passed. We're now in the Committee of the Whole. If there's anyone who has business to bring to the attention of the council regarding the city, now would be the appropriate time. Again, will you just have your name and address for the record, please?
Good evening, everybody. David Carter, Maple Street. I don't know if I'm out of order or not, but I would like to talk a little about the crossing guards, if that's okay. I'm hoping that you guys will reinstate the money that was taken out and put it back in and rehire the 8 crossing guards that got laid off. I think times have changed since Mr. Cook was a crossing guard as a kid. As a crossing guard of myself, I'm at Coelho School, or I was until I got laid off. You can walk out there with a green coat and have a stop sign, and people are not stopping. And one of these days, somebody's gonna get hit if there's no crossing guard at any of these stops that have been taken away. So, that's my spiel.
Okay, are there any questions for the speaker? Council Blair.
With your experience since coming in tonight as a crossing guard, the attention span of drivers, have you noticed, has diminished, or
The heads are down.
the heads are
The
down?
heads are down. And they were finally stopped at the last second. And when you let them go, they roll down the window and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I was checking my phone." You know, they're honest about it, but sometimes I have gotten almost hit. You know, you walk out in the street and you see them coming down and they stop at the very last second. And as crossing guards, we take our jobs very seriously. And once you finish the day, you feel good as long as nobody's gotten hurt.
Follow up?
How long have you, what is your district, or the street intersections is that?
Which one's, what?
What do you cover personally now?
I do Coelho School,
Wells,
in South
right
Attleboro,
on,
Brown
Main
Street.
Road?
I cross the kids and I direct the traffic for the buses and, the cars coming out of the, driveway.
If I may follow up, Mr. President?
Yes.
Over the years, how many years you been there now?
4 years.
4. Have you acquired familiarity with the kids that come across and their families?
Yes, they're very nice to me. You get gifts and everything, and you get nice notes saying, "Thank you for keeping our kids safe."
Do those children, if I may, rely on you not only to get them across the street, but do they feel they're being protected as they're walking to and from school because they have somebody there they can trust and they're familiar with?
They're very happy that somebody's there. It's not just my spot, but all the spots, you know? I think they take it for granted that we're gonna cross them and they're gonna make it to school safely and get home safely.
Well, I personally believe that that's been an injustice to cut that particular item. I didn't vote for the cut myself, and I think that it's something that should be relooked at. I will more than likely be bringing in new business come Thursday to see if my fellow councilors have had the opportunity to rethink the safety of our children, both crossing the streets and from the number of incidents, I don't want to go into to scare people, that kids walking to and from school have been tried to be picked up, molested, and whatnot. And I honestly feel that, and I don't think it's a joking matter or a laughing matter either, but I think that we have to look at the safety of our children, at least the safety of them walking across streets in walking distance back and forth. We don't have the availability to have full-time police officers out there. And I honestly think that these crossing guards are an asset to the protection of our children going to and from schools. I just don't think it's something we should start in September with taking away that bit of safety from kids that are walking.
Councilor Hall, and then Councilor Parker, and then Councilor Hagney. Councilor Hall.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank
I know that you and I talked, and so I know that you have had some conversations with the other crossing guards. Am I correct in saying that? I know there's one area, and I did also spend several hours with the police chief in regards to this issue and what his plan and strategy was. And he wishes he could have more crossing guards. So, but I did have one thing that he did bring up, and I'm gonna pose it to you, and if you know, fine. I think it's the Thatcher School area. There seems to be cross streets, several cross streets, right in a row. And at each one of those stop signs, is there not a crossing guard for every one of those right in a row?
There is a crossing guard right there.
Do you feel that that might be a place where, you know, where some could probably be removed?
As you drive as adults, you notice that people don't stop at four-way stop signs anymore. They figure, well, that guy's stopping, I'm gonna keep going. And that's the same reason for the crossing guards to be there, because they just don't stop. Yeah, everybody's in a hurry. And as long as there's that bright green coat or the stop sign, they'll see it at the last second and they'll stop.
So and I'll just reiterate, and I apologize. So you feel that every one of those crosswalks, even though it's a short distance, that's really the safest thing to do?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
I was a crossing guard when I first started over by Thatcher, just before you get to the school, Brownell and James Street. I was there when I first started, so.
Thank you, then.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Councilor Parker.
Thank you, President Cook. Thank
You're
you for
welcome.
coming in. I see you on the streets all the time.
Thanks.
I just wanted to make a small point of clarification, and I've had conversations with multiple crossing guards across the city. And just so that the conversation that took place during the budget when we were making cuts or reappropriations, I just want to just reiterate why that took place. The request was made that there would be an evaluation, similar to what Councilor Hall is speaking about, that is it necessary? Can we retrain? Is it necessary to have crossing guards at every single intersection? And one of the comments that I made during that time was, you know, there are neighborhoods that change, and maybe there's an intersection that there are no longer young children there, and it was the request of the council, because the cut was approved by the council, it passed, to encourage the police chief to do an evaluation. And that was really simply, that was the reason. It was kind of like this is why we need you to do this. We're gonna kind of force your hand to do a reevaluation to make sure, to ensure that all of the roads that are necessary are covered. Anything could come back to us. It could, if he does the evaluation, and he might say, you know what, all the areas that we're currently covering are necessary, and I found a couple other areas that could be necessary as well. That's the only information that we're looking for. None of child's life is priceless, of course, but if you're not crossing anyone at all, we need to kind of know that. And that was the impetus for the reduction. None of us want to see you be laid off. We want to see that information. I just wanted to make that clear publicly, because people have been asking why, and that would be why. We support crossing guards. We want kids to get to school safely with the reductions in transportation. Again, it was just merely a tool for us to use to kind of encourage a reevaluation. Thank you.
Councilor Hagney.
Thank you, David. I recognize you from working with my mom at the Sun Chronicle years ago. And I also had talked to the police chief about this, and he was very critical about this cut. That it's not playing games with the budget, that when we cut something, and when we first introduced this as a cut, was to have discussion, to talk about the evaluation. I even said on the floor that I don't support not having crossing guards, that we do need the crossing guards. Even when I travel to work, I see them at Locust for Sutter, certain high-traffic areas. And I also teach classroom driver's ed to teens, and one of the things is distracted drivers. So even maybe targeting, off topic a little bit, is the enforcement of the drivers in the areas also. Not just looking at just the crossing guards, but the enforcement, because you yourself said you've almost been hit. So even just having you there to help the children, you're also having a safety issue too. So I'm also thinking about even maybe looking further that enforcement in the different areas. I've driven in and out of Thatcher School, and you're also correct there. It's very congested. Parking's tough. The parking lot gets flowed, and the parents are parking down side streets. They're parking askewed all over the place, picking up their children. It's a congested, busy area. For you said you're only over at Coelho. So is there an overlap of time, or so if someone's different at Hill Roberts, because I know there's staggered starting times for schools, is there any way they don't do, because I know my mother was a crossing guard, and she would do different intersections at different times when I was in school. So is there a staggering where we can utilize them, or is that an hours issue for, can you?
It's hours, we get paid 3 hours a day.
Okay.
Where my spot is, you get people, not just kids, but you're getting older people taking their walk, especially during the nice weather. You're getting joggers, and they have those earphones on, so you can't tell them to wait, or you gotta hold your hand up, so you gotta help them cross. There's no sidewalk on the other street where I am. There's, people pushing wheelchairs. I guess there's a nursing home or some kind of nursing someplace that way, and you're kind of helping them cross. You got people walking dogs. So it's just not the kids when they go to school or get out of school. You're crossing other people, you know, for that hour and a half. It's an hour and a half you're there in the morning, hour and a half in the afternoon.
Okay, and is it cost prohibitive to have, because I know where Hill Roberts is a late, certain schools start at separate times. We have the high school, middle schools, and, because all the buses can't be utilized at one time,
Right.
Picking all the students up, that's why we have the staggered times, right? So, that would maybe even something as a crossing guard, I don't know if you guys brought up, is sharing different positions for different schools, I don't know if it's more hours, not just hiring new crossing guards, but having you do more hours or something?
I think the chief likes it where we stay at one spot.
Okay.
I have gotten kids that come to school late, so you're walking, you're crossing them too.
Okay.
Okay? You're also crossing where I am, elementary kids getting a bus right near the school. So you're crossing them and the parents.
Thank you.
Then
And I
after the bus picks them up, then you're crossing the parents again.
And as I said, I support having this come back in. I was hoping maybe even something would come down this week from the administration to put that back in too. I know the police chief has been very critical of this. When I met with him in his office for the safety of the children, the schools. So thank you for phone calls and everything you've been doing. Thank you.
Council Blair?
If I just reiterate, I will be bringing in new business. I've invited the chief to come in and answer some of the questions that this gentleman really can answer, those specific questions. The time schedule we're on, as far as the kids going back to school, is getting real short. So I feel if we can get the majority of our councilors to maybe have rethought it a lot, get the motion coming in asking, or part of the agreement that they further study to see if there's any savings, or can we shift things around? I'm all for that, but I'm not for letting the kids go back to school without, how do you say, to be overprotective in some instances is important. And I honestly think that to protect the children walking in today's age. It's not when I went to school or with any of us here sitting on the council at the school. I think it's a changed world out there, the east side especially. So, you know, I would hope that when I bring in a new business, I'll try to satisfy everybody's wants, that we relook at this with a guarantee that they'll look at it. That's why I've asked Kyle to come in to answer some of the questions. Let's consult the experts. I mean, we all sit here and we're not experts in every field. We all have a strong point somewhere in our past professions or our current professions. But in a case with safety is concerned for our children out there and the crossing guards, I would rather be overcautious than undercautious as far as protection is concerned. And I would like to have the chief come in, and he's the expert, let's face it, we're not. And he can answer some of the questions that maybe some of the councilors have. And I would like to have something going forward to promise that we'll look at it. And Ms. Parika, that's what you said you wanted, was to relook at it. So I think you've made your point. We get the chief in, you can ask, any of the councilors, we can ask questions. I'm not directing this directly at you, Heather, by any means. But, because I know you have a feeling for children, you're on the bus, and that feeling you transport. So, I would like to, I'm gonna try to draft a proper motion for Thursday, only because of the time situation. And either that, or do you want to come back for a special meeting for this before September? Do you think it's something we can hash out Thursday?
Are you asking me that question?
I'm asking the council, not you.
I think I think it's something we all think about and we can decide between now and Thursday.
Okay.
In terms of just seeing how this can all be handled and brought forward and so forth, the speakers, whatever.
I'm sorry, Frank, I
Sorry.
didn't quite hear you.
No, I said this is something on Thursday night, we can hash out the details of it, I'm sure,
Okay,
in terms of how even getting people in here.
thank
Any
you.
other
One more
questions?
comment.
Yes.
I know when you guys you took away the money, there was a question about maybe a survey, how many kids walk to school, how many cars go by. We did do that, I think, beginning of May. They asked us all to count how many kids cross and how many cars go by. And unbelievable, I figured just a couple hundred cars that would go by me. It was over 1,000 from that time limit in the morning and in the afternoon. 1,000, maybe 1,200 cars just in the morning. So you're looking at that many cars going by just in an hour and a half. Cars, trucks, buses. So, kids, you're looking at 40 or 50 that go by me in the morning. And in the afternoon, it's probably about 70 or 80. And on a half a day, you're looking at hundreds, because they all walk down to all the little restaurants down there.
Half days. Half days are nice.
So, Dave, who requested that, and where did that information go? Did it go to the police chief, or
I went to the chief.
was it the chief? All right,
I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn for him, but I know that was one of your concerns at your meeting that night. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the speaker? Okay, again, thank you for coming in.
Yep.
Is there anyone else here to speak to the council on any matter before the city? Good evening. Could you have your name and address, please?
Good evening. Yes, Kyle Reeves, 191 Tiffany Street.
Did you get that? Okay. Thank you.
Wanted to thank the council for listening. As you know, on Tiffany Street, there's been a lot going on with Attleboro Sand and Gravel, and I just wanted to speak in favor of reinstating the funds for the solicitor to continue that fight and keeping the asphalt, concrete, whatever, shenanigans he's trying to get in there with the smug look on his face that he would never, ever let his kids or family or anybody else live anywhere near the building and situation that he wants to create there. So I just wanted to come down and...
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Councilor Hagney?
Thank you for coming in tonight. I know we've been very diligent as, it's not just a neighborhood, there's a whole area within the city, and it impacts the whole city. And I know we've been I know Council Conte had been, present at some of the meetings, we've been at the library, at planning board, zoning board, and, thank you for being a vocal resident to come in to, express your need as a resident to the whole council this evening. So thank you very much.
No,
And I
definitely, and,
continue
and,
try
and to
help
date,
as
you know, not to speak for all, you know, the rest of my fellow neighbors, but, you know, to date, we've been very happy with, you know, the support that we've received in the fight against, you know, Attleboro Sand and Gravel. So, just, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for the gentleman? Okay, thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to bring the matter before the city council? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to arise.
Second.
Thank you, the motion is in order. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay, we're back to the regular business at 8:09. We're going to be taking a recess for committee meetings, and then we'll come back and do the rest of it. I'd just like a show of hands. Who is planning to have their meeting tonight? Yeah, hold on. I'm aware of that. All right, so, let's see, so that's, zoning and land use, transportation, there's the only two over here. And who over here is having a meeting besides, what's the whole thing? Okay, so it's gonna be just budget, transportation, traffic, and zoning and land use, those will be the only committees that are meeting? Okay, all right, so I'm going to entertain a motion for a recess.
Second.
Thank you, the motion is in order, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion passes. We're in recess for, 8:10,
If you don't mind, Bob's here, so, with the visitor.
right. So who's going first, second, and third?
Me. docket of July 21st, 2016. I need my pillow. Can't reach the ground. Ugh, I'm vertically challenged. I'm gonna have my pillows. Okay. I entertain a motion to approve the mayor's request for the supplemental appropriation of $50,483.22 to account 112410000-530101 citywide professional services to allow the city to adequately defend itself against an attempt to build an asphalt plant off Tiffany Street and county streets, which affects countless constituents throughout the city, as well as to enable the city solicitor to deal with bankruptcies and other complex litigation that requires additional assistance in defending the city.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Delicio. I had asked City Solicitor Bob Mangiarati to come in tonight before I open the floor to have any questions, is just to kind of, for everybody out there, even on TV, watching, streaming later on their internet, to kind of explain a little of the background as much as you can to with the Tiffany Street in particular, why we are where we are, why we need to, we didn't initiate this, that the city is being sued by this entity, that we need to defend this, where we are, and what we're doing going forward. So Mr. Mangiarati?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, for allowing me to appear before your committee. I understand that the members of the council had some questions about this portion of the budget. I did submit a memo to the mayor that sort of lays it out, which I think he shared with you, but what I'm going to do today is explain to you how I envision this $50,000 expenditure being used, why I think it's necessary, and then I'll just try to answer any questions that you may have about it or anything else that relates to it. One of the factors that we have to, I respectfully suggest you must consider, is that the way we've set up the city solicitor's office right now, it's a one-man office. It's me. I've been a lawyer for a long time. I have the benefit of experience, but I have no paralegals. I have no associates. I really don't even have a secretary. Allison Wood, who's one of the mayor's secretaries, helps me from time to time. But it's essentially a one-man office. Being in City Hall has had advantages. I can tell you that I have literally countless visits from public officials in the building or various departments asking about everything from, today I had questions about, a vicious dog hearing. I've had other questions about complex accounting questions, construction contracts, as well as doing the day-to-day legal affairs. As an example, today I was in Lakeville on a Conservation Commission case. So it's a very busy operation, and one that I hope has been serving the city well. But occasionally we run into situations where I think additional funds have to be spent. The areas that I've pointed out here, or with respect to things that I know about right now that I anticipate needing funds for, fall into two categories. The most important, perhaps most expensive, is the Attleboro Sand and Gravel litigation. This is actually 4 separate lawsuits, all initiated by Attleboro Sand and Gravel against the city of Attleboro. And I'll briefly explain to you what those 4 cases are, very briefly, and then I'll answer any particulars that you have about it. But as an overall observation, Attleboro Sand and Gravel is a well-funded organization that's aggressively pursuing any of its rights, and as a result, we have to put forth a significant amount of effort when we think that our public officials have in fact followed the law. And this is a case where I am supporting decisions of the building inspector, the planning board, and the zoning board. And each one of those instances, on behalf of the city, I've evaluated their decisions. And I believe that they acted well within their discretion, and they have applied the zoning ordinance fairly. And I think that it's important for us to remember that although this sand and gravel case may affect one neighborhood, the purpose of zoning, the purpose of wetland regulations is to protect all of us from undesirable uses, from things that hurt the environment, things that hurt public health. And so that while we think that this particular area of Tiffany Street is going to be particularly impacted by this, although I think there are negative consequences for the entire city, it could be your neighborhood next time, it could be my neighborhood the next time. In order for us to properly carry out city government, we have a regulatory scheme, and it has to apply to everybody. The zoning regulations, the wetland regulations, they apply to everyone, whether it's me wanting to put in a chicken coop in my backyard or a well-funded developer who wants to build an asphalt plant in a residential neighborhood. So I urge you to bear in mind the importance of maintaining the integrity of our regulations and our ordinances to make sure that we apply them fairly and treat everyone equally, regardless of where they're coming from. So with respect to the Attleboro Sand and Gravel case, the first case alleges that the bituminous concrete plant proposed for Tiffany Street is a permitted use under the pre-2015 ordinance. And in that case, that's the first case, and there's been a great deal of legal research and writing done. We've briefed the legal issues as to whether or not the pre-2015 zoning ordinance allows a bituminous concrete plant. The question in that case is whether or not bituminous concrete manufacturing is light manufacturing, or is it the treating of storage and treating of raw materials. In both instances, the building inspector concluded it is not light manufacturing, it is not the treating and processing of raw materials. It is in fact heavy manufacturing. And as part of that case, we've done a lot of preliminary legal research that indicates that manufacturing is what they're doing there. We've looked at the difference between processing and treating raw materials and manufacturing, and I've reached the conclusion that the city building inspector reached a proper conclusion. There's some element of discretion that the building inspector has to apply. In this case, I think he was entirely correct. He properly exercised his discretion, and he should be defended. And in that case was almost ready for trial. A great deal of work has already been done on the case. There's a lot of research and writing. There are briefs. Each side had a stack of briefs about that high. The court decided to defer action on that. So there is no trial scheduled on that question because, as you know, the City Council last year changed the zoning ordinance and in response to concerns of neighbors to eliminate any ambiguity in the zoning ordinance. You've made it particularly clear now, expressly clear, that a bituminous concrete plant is not allowed in the industrial business district where this property is located. So the second case that was filed is a case that alleges the amendment to the zoning amendment banning bituminous concrete plants does not apply to Attleboro Sand and Gravel because of certain grandfathering rights. And as you probably know, our law on zoning provides certain zoning freezes, so-called grandfathering rights. And we looked at that, and we thought that they did have some grandfathering rights, but those grandfathering rights have expired. And that case has already gone to trial. And so that's one of the four that's gone to trial. I can tell you, I can't guarantee it, but I think that the city made very good arguments, and I think there's a strong likelihood that we'll succeed. One of the things that I guess you should know is that the developer, Mr. LaRusso, has told me through his attorney that if we lose this case, we're going to appeal it. And that will then involve, again, more legal research and writing, and a great deal of paralegal work. When you have an appeal to the appeals court, there's a lot more paper shuffling that has to be done to meet the procedural requirements of the appeals court. And that work is usually done by paralegals, which will be something that we'll have to face. If we lose the case, then we may not appeal. I mean, we may not appeal, it depends. If we win the case, though, I think we'd have to defend it at the appellate level. As I said before, I'm reasonably confident that these cases have merit. The third case involves the decision of the Zoning Board of Appeals that determined that a concrete batch plant is not a permitted use in the Industrial Business District, IBP. Concrete batch plant is the gray stuff, gray cement. Bituminous concrete is the black stuff. Attleboro Sand and Gravel has proposed both. And in this case, the Zoning Board of Appeals, pursuant to an appeal by the neighbors, said that we don't think that a concrete batch plant is permitted use in the industrial business park because it's not light manufacturing and it's not treating and processing of raw materials. Again, I've looked at that case. I've looked at a very carefully worded decision of your Zoning Board of Appeals, and they have acted rationally and, in my opinion, well within their discretion. And again, we have to, I emphasize this, in order to protect the integrity of the work that all of these volunteers do for us, and some of you have been on planning boards and zoning boards, so you know how much work it is. So in order to, I think, recognize their efforts, when they make a decision, even if it's unpopular with an applicant, I think we have an obligation, particularly if they made what, in my judgment as your lawyer, is the right decision, we should defend it. And I can tell you that I've had the honor of serving this city for 15 years as your city solicitor, and I've defended the zoning board many times, and I can tell you that it's a very reasonable board. I don't think I've ever lost a case that the zoning board has decided. Because we are fortunate that we have people of character and good judgment who are community-minded serving on our Zoning Board of Appeals. So I am comfortable with defending them for a variety of reasons, but I guess most important from your point of view is I think they made the right decision. And I want to get back to the Zoning Board decision in just a minute, but let me just finish the fourth case. The fourth case is an appeal of a planning board decision. And the planning board decision had to do with a subdivision. There was this, what we call a ghost subdivision that was proposed for this tract of land that would have created another zoning freeze, another set of grandfathering rights for the landowner. And in the judgment of the planning board, the definitive plan application that they submitted, for no purpose other than grandfathering rights, they never really intended to build a subdivision. They've admitted that to us in a deposition. But in our judgment, in the planning board's judgment, the definitive plan application did not satisfy the state statute or the regulations applicable to subdivisions. And my advice to the planning board in respect to that, I said, we all know that they don't intend to build it, but you have a duty to treat it like any other subdivision. Apply the regulations, do your job. In my judgment, they did do their job, and they correctly denied the approval of that plan. And that's just another front that this Attleboro Sand and Gravel Company has created in this battle to try to develop this section in the Industrial Business Park District. Now, if I may just go back, and I want to leave time for questions, but I think it's important for you to understand that part of this appropriation also relates to not only special counsel, but also to expert witnesses. And this case, the next case that's going to come to trial, and I think it'll be before the end of this year, is the concrete batch plant and whether or not it's light manufacturing. And under our zoning ordinance, light manufacturing has to employ quiet machinery. And there's also, for all uses in the Industrial Business Park District, a requirement that the sound generated by the proposed use does not exceed 10 decibels over background noise at the property line. The applicant, Attleboro Sand and Gravel, has a report from a sound expert, which I question. I don't think it is specifically, or I don't think it's sufficiently detailed, nor does it, in my judgment, create demonstrate an accurate depiction of what the situation is that would occur if this plant was built. So in order to support the zoning board's decision, I would like to hire an expert. There's an engineering firm in Cambridge that is highly regarded, and I've been in touch with them. It's a company called Ascentech, and they will do a peer review of the other side's report, and then based upon their peer review of that report, if I think additional testing is needed, I think it would be warranted, because if we can demonstrate to the court that it's not so-called quiet machinery, or that it doesn't meet the decibel criteria and the performance standards, then it would be pretty easy to sustain the zoning board's decision. But expert witnesses cost a lot of money. I think it's going to be $5,000 or more, depending on how much testing I have them do. And then with respect to those cases, because there's enormous amounts of legal research and writing, in parts of it there are enormous parts of paralegal work. I've used Murphy, Hesse, Toomey, and Lehane, my former law firm, in particular a very bright young associate who worked on the file before I came in-house. And she's assisted me in preparing the briefs that I referred to earlier in my presentation. And I think that she will be essential to continue to represent the city fully. And when I took the job in-house, the contract, which I think the council has seen, indicated that for complex litigation or for areas of unique specialization, that I would be able to hire outside counsel. And I want you to know that I do that very judiciously. For example, this attorney, whose name is Felicia Vasudovan, an excellent attorney, very bright and very efficient, frankly. She did a lot of the writing for some of the briefing. I took what she did, her research, and then I rewrote it based upon my experience. And then when the trial came up, although she sat with me and helped me during the trial, I tried the case. So that as a result, there was a great deal of work that I did as part of that case. But I don't think I could have done all of it effectively and still carry out my day-to-day duties here. So that's what I'm looking forward to in the upcoming matters that will be coming to trial really not only this fiscal year, but the year after that. This case is going to live on. And finally, and forgive me for being a little long-winded, the tax collector uses, the tax collector gets involved with bankruptcies, and whenever a taxpayer goes bankrupt, it's critically important that we know what the status of the bankruptcy is. It's illegal, and it subjects the city to very severe penalties if we pursue collection against somebody who's in bankruptcy. By the same token, once somebody goes into bankruptcy, we know about it, we file a notice of claim, we monitor it, and we make sure that when the person goes out of bankruptcy, the case is terminated or dismissed for whatever reason, then we recommence collection activity. And that allows our tax collector to maximize the recovery of tax revenues from people who owe us money. That area of bankruptcy was done by another attorney at my old firm, Murphy, Hesse, Toomey, and Lehane, Lauren Galvin, also a very bright, competent young woman. And she's developed an expertise in bankruptcy. And perhaps more importantly, that she's developed a system with the legal assistants and paralegals at Murphy, Hesse, Toomey, and Lehane that enables them to follow these things online, quickly produce reports for the tax collector in a way that I think allows for the work to be done, frankly, quickly and efficiently. Not having paralegals, not having the time to fuss around with the bankruptcy court website, in my judgment, it wasn't a beneficial use of my time. I'm a lawyer for 41 years. This is paralegal work to track those things. They don't charge us that much, but I think it's an expenditure that is beneficial to the tax collector and to the citizens as a whole. So, I've talked to you about Attleboro Sand and Gravel, I've talked to you about bankruptcy, I've talked to you about special counsel, I've talked to you about experts. The only last thing I want to add is, although I've mentioned my former law firm, Murphy, Hesse, Toomey, and Lehane, I have no financial connection with them or any other affiliation other than the fact that I used to work there. So there's no benefit going to me. I use them because they're familiar with the work and they can do our work efficiently. questions, if I may.
Okay. Committee members first, if you have any questions, before I open it up to the floor. Any?
Bob, excuse me.
Yeah.
Bob, the complexity of particularly the more sand and gravel, without expert witnesses in your behalf and counsel, do you feel you could adequately defend that?
No, I really don't. I mean, we're gonna have what they call a trial de novo on the issues about whether or not this conforms to zoning, and the question of whether or not it meets the performance standards with respect to decibel levels, and the question of whether or not the machinery used in a concrete patch plant is quiet, is essential to that court being able to make that determination. So for me to go into battle, so to speak, without an expert, is like tying one hand behind my back in a fight. I mean, that's what we do in zoning. I've been entrusted with your legal affairs for a long time. I try never to spend money unless it's necessary, but in my judgment, it is necessary here if we're gonna win the case.
Oh, and just to follow up, I was in the automobile business for 50 years, but I wasn't a transmission expert in that field. In the law field that you read about today, there's specialties in that field that far outreach specialties in my field. So I can understand where if you're gonna adequately defend the city, then you've gotta use the resources necessary to defend it. And it doesn't sound like it's overreaching
Well,
by any means.
thank you, Counselor. I mean, again, just to repeat, I've been a municipal lawyer for a long time. There's a lot of stuff I know, but I don't know everything. So, you know, I will only use special counsel when I have to, and sometimes it's expertise, like in the bankruptcy area. Other times it's simply manpower questions. So, thank you for your comments. I think they're true to my experience.
And Bob, I know even attending certain planning, zoning meetings, when the opposition is present, they may have 6 deep in different types of engineers and lawyers, and they have their own team present too, with expertise. So I think even having the city have that backup with the expertise would only be beneficial to our case. So even though it may cost $5,000, what would be the outcome inversely? The cost to the city overall too.
Well,
So-
I mean, that's, thank you, Madam Chairman. I mean, that's what I firmly believe. And I think, and the only thing I guess I can say is, this isn't always about dollars and cents. You know, you are, as I mentioned before, we are trying to protect the integrity of the zoning ordinance, to recognize the hard work done by our boards, understand the legitimate concerns of our neighbors. It's awfully hard to quantify what that's all worth, but in my judgment, it's an important part of what we do as a city. So it could cost money, but it also, it affects our ability to effectively govern.
Thank you. Mr. DeLucia?
Thank you. Mr. Mangiarotti, thanks for coming down. So I don't think that most people realize that there are 4 separate lawsuits going on. I think a lot of people look at it as one lawsuit. Now, I was against cutting these funds to begin with. I think that it's our responsibility to make sure you have the resources and the capacity, the right people in the right place at the right time, to ensure that you're accurately and appropriately able to defend the city and, more importantly, the residents in this situation. So my question becomes, when you talk about that $5,000, that's only for one of the lawsuits, correct? So
It's only for one of the lawsuits, and frankly, and I want to make this clear, that may be sort of a retainer. I mean, depending upon what this expert has to say. So I don't think he will, but if the expert says, yeah, their expert is right, this doesn't violate the ordinance, well, then I'll say, okay, I'm going to lose on that point. I suspect he's not going to say that. And if he says there are weaknesses in their position and we should explore this and we should explore that, then I'll have to pay him to explore this and that. So this is just a threshold inquiry. In fact, I was on the phone with him today, and I don't have the price estimate, so I don't know what it is. I mean, I can tell you that, I mean, I got a sense that people just wanted to make sure they knew where this money was going, and I hope that by coming in here, I am explaining it to you sufficiently. But all of this stuff is a case-by-case basis. You know, to the extent that the council asks for information, I'll always be happy to give it to you. So, the answer is yes, the $5,000 is only for one case, and it's only the get-in price, and there may be more. Again, you know, I grind these people down. That's probably not the right word, but I try, you know, even in this case, because when I was about to hire this guy last fiscal year, and I was saying, oh, I can't possibly afford this, and you gotta do this and that for me. So, you know, I'm mindful of the fiscal constraints that we have, and so I try to get the best bang for the buck, so to speak.
If I may?
Yes.
So my bigger point is, in order to appropriately try these 4 cases, just with ASG, the cost could go, and did a nice job illustrating that. If your expert comes back and says, well, there's holes, well, all of a sudden you then have to kind of almost hit the pause button, look at different avenues and different possibilities, which could again need you to dip into those coffers.
That's right. You understand entirely, Mr. DeLucio. That's exactly my point.
Thank you.
Julie?
Yes, thank you. And Mr. Mangiarotti, thank you again, and I spent several hours with you today also.
Well, not several hours, but we had a nice
Okay,
chat.
felt like that. And I sort of played the devil's advocate, and I'm gonna come right out and say, I presented myself in terms of the owner of the property and defending that owner's right to have a future income, if you would, and we discussed that. And I know that one of the concerns was about the folks in Attleboro. There's been some court cases that have come through here before, prior to my even coming to Attleboro. I heard all about them, where it was felt that a lot of money was spent and perhaps didn't resolve in the right way, if you would, for the city's benefit. So I think there's some concern about that. And I did talk to you. Number one, what is the probability that we would win this case? And you did explain that to me. And you'd explained it to everybody here on the floor, so I appreciate that, because I think that's a very important question. If we don't think we're gonna win it, why are we going in and spending the money? Okay, thank you for that answer. The second thing was, I asked you, what was the threshold, if you would? In other words, do we keep going and keep going and keep going till you know, this, as long as this can happen? And the answer was that if we find a leeway, if somebody does say there's some open space, there's some light coming in somewhere, that's where we'll pursue it. And if we do get a favorable judgment, even if it's appealed, I agree with you 100%. Now, after speaking to you, that's probably something that we need to pursue. So that's just, is that fairest to
Yeah, I mean, I think we had a nice chat, and I appreciate your interest in the depth of your inquiry. I mean, I think you asked probing questions that are worth asking, and I think that's the sort of thing that you're all entitled to hear when you want to hear it. So, yeah, I mean, you know, I wish I could say I win every case, then I'm always right. I can't. But the work that I do, it's been not that you care that much, but it's been a very rewarding career, because very challenging, and there are difficulties that you have to overcome, and even sometimes when you lose at one level, you can prevail or make the case better for your client. Every case is different, and I think that I've always been entirely candid with this council anytime you ask a question about any case, and I'm happy to do that. I mean, you know, you people are the guardians of the budget, and you people are the board of directors of our city. So, you know, ask away.
I have one more, if I could.
Yeah, and
very
then Council
quickly.
Delicio, Cooper, Parika.
I just want to point out, and I know that we had a discussion, and this kind of went back to the budget. I had asked the question about, you know, having you on board, does it save any money? And I just want to point out that I did get some figures on that. And the mayor had recommended $160,250. And we are actually saving money by having you in-house as to the amount of money historically that we have spent by not having you here. And it's a significant amount of money. So in FY15, the amount of money we paid for outside was $189,156. You're a bargain.
Well, thank you for those kind words. I mean, if I may, Madam Chair, I'm reminded of the saying that there are lies, there are damn lies, and there are statistics. I mean, each case, every year is different. You know, tomorrow, another Attleboro sand and gravel case could come in on an entirely different part of city government, and it could cost us a fortune. And those of us who have been around for a while remember the most unfortunate expenses that we incurred in the Attleboro Redevelopment Authority case. That was extraordinarily expensive. You know, I think that those of us who followed for a long time understand that it was a long war battle to sort of put that ship, set that ship afloat in the right direction, and many of you have participated in that. And I think you should, even though it was a difficult road, one that was costly, you've got the Attleboro Redevelopment Authority now on track, completing projects. We finished the Swank project. We're ready to go forward. So, you know, we're gonna do a bunch of things that you're all aware of. I don't want to get into it. I just mentioned to it that Julie, or Ms. Council Hall, that it really does vary with case to case. You know, if we never had a piece of litigation, you know, I'd be doing great at my salary. But, you know, whenever things get complicated, that's when it costs money. And as I said before, we'll talk about it anytime it happens. I mean, I don't want to, but I may be back again. If I have to come back again, I'll try to explain why I need money. But, you know, I don't know what each year holds.
Thank you, Bob. And another thing I just want to, I know it was brought up to have a different scenario, whether in-house or out-house, outside of the city hall. Tonight, that might be a different matter if that was different business. Right now, the scenario before us is you are in-house.
Right.
So we're
No, I mean,
not gonna kind of go off onto that tangent a little bit, just to focus on the motion itself.
Madam Chairman, I mean, I think that over time, I may be making recommendations to the mayor that'll eventually trickle down to you.
And that would be for
But
another
that's for
time, just to
another day,
focus on this
Unless there's
motion.
anything in particular you want to talk about, but I agree with you. I think
Thank you.
that's for another day, and I'm
Yeah,
willing
different
to
scenario.
talk
We could
about
be here
that.
all night talking about scenarios and numbers and stuff. Jeremy?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Angirotti. I did vote for this cut, and I have some frustrations, and I wanted to express those to you so that you kind of know where I'm coming from. And the first has to do with Attleboro sand and gravel. I feel like the cases that came before us were, one, fully foreseeable, and two, were possibly preventable. But the council at the time chose to willfully deny ourselves information. So I would ask you to look at the joint public hearing from May 5th, 2015. During that public hearing, we did have Mr. Higgins, the attorney from Attleboro Sand and Gravel, come in and speak to us. And
What date is that, sir?
yep, May 5th, 2015.
Oh, yes.
That's
okay,
when we
I
rezoned.
remember this.
Yep, all right. So, because you're in here, you're in the minutes, you were
Yeah,
here.
no, I was there. Yeah, I remember.
And, you know, many of my fellow councilors making declarative statements about being grandfathered in and about being able to continue making concrete. And I wanted to understand what Attleboro Sand and Gravel thought they were doing so that we as a council would know whether or not we should rezone, or whether or not what we were doing was even appropriate, if it would kind of promise us a lawsuit coming down the line. So I asked questions such as, oh, so Mr. Higgins, do you think you're grandfathered in? And I was gavelled down. I was told it was an inappropriate question, I could not ask it. So I said, oh, Mr. Higgins, I think that what you might be saying is you believe that you can produce asphalt and gravel by right. Is that what you're saying? I was gavelled down. I was told it was an inappropriate question. In all, I was gavelled down almost half a dozen times, and I filed 3 formal objections that night. But I feel like if the planning board and this council had those answers, we could have taken preventative measures so that we were never at this spot. So I am so frustrated that we willfully chose to deny ourselves this information that could have been helpful and could have saved the city tens of thousands of dollars. So that's nothing against you, but that is part of why this is a very frustrating $50,000 to have to reinstate. I feel like if we had done our jobs right, we never would have been here. So that's my first concern.
Madam Chairman, may I respond to Mr. Denley? Just
Yes.
briefly, I mean, you know, the discretion of the chair at the time, I have no control over, and, you know, we have to all respect that. I don't think that by enacting the changed ordinance, you lessen the likelihood of litigation. I think there would have been litigation anyway. It might have been different litigation, but there was gonna be litigation on this. The concrete batch plant had already been way down the road at this point, and now the zoning board acted on a building permit that was issued. And the second part of it, I mean, with the permission of the president, I am available really to talk to people at length. And I welcome that, and I think most of you know that I'm available informally. I'm pretty accessible. And, you know, in hindsight, if I had known the depth of your concern, it might have warranted a chat between you and me, just so you could fully understand it. Of course, that doesn't really substitute for what you're talking about. You were hoping for a more open discussion about some of these issues, and I really can't comment on that. But going forward, I think it's probably healthy for members of the council to bring those questions to me. Thank you.
Who I thought was important you knew.
No, I do understand.
Part of why I supported the cut. It was out of this deep frustration that we did not do our jobs, and we're bringing this cost upon ourselves as a city. And I think you're missing a nuance. I'm not saying I voted for the rezoning. I thought in that even knowing what Mr. Higgins was trying to say, I thought that was the best thing we could do. My frustration comes from denying ourselves the information of what our opponents are willing to forthright tell us, to say, hey, I will be arguing blank, blank, blank against you. I'd love to know what those three things are. That way we could prepare for it. That way we could even circumvent it possibly. So that's one of my frustrations. My other one is when it comes to professional services, when we did bring you in-house, I had many concerns about how you were going to do research, whether you had access to Westlaw or LexisNexis, whether you would have a legal aid or an assistant, and I got reassurances that you had it under control. And I think you're a very intelligent man. You always answer all my questions. I find all of your memos to be very thorough, and I've kind of heard that maybe, you're not competent in this, so we need to hire someone. And I don't think that's a fair argument. I think you're a great lawyer. You've handled cases for us before. So I understand that in special circumstances you would need like an expert witness or outside counsel, but that's another one of my frustrations and why I voted against this funding. And I just thought you should know that. I don't know how my vote will be tonight, but I think you're great. I think if we just gave you enough money for the expert witness, I think you'd be more than competent at handling this case for us. And I think that this case is actually possibly preventable and unnecessary to begin with. So it's just frustrating to spend so much money on it. So thank you for listening to my gripes.
Did you have 3 or 2? 2?
I merged 2 and 3 together.
Okay.
Yes.
Madam Chair, first of all, thank you for your kind words. I appreciate that. The need for special, first of all, let me organize my thoughts for half a second. I've only been in-house for just a little over a year. And I do have Lexis, for example. And I have access to the social law library and various other resources. As I alluded to the chairman, I may be making recommendations to the mayor and eventually to the council about how the solicitor's office should be organized. There may be ways that it can be improved. But that's for another day. I can tell you, though, that I think I bring value to the city by being here. I think it's a model that not only the mayor, but I think the department heads have found useful to them. And whether I'm helping with a bid document one day or whatever it might be, a pothole claim the next, I think that it does make government move along efficiently. I do urge you, though, to act favorably on this matter because, and while I'm willing to talk to you, I don't think it makes sense to, every time I need to spend $1, I have to come back here and explain it to you. That's an exaggeration, of course, but I think that the $50,000 is a reasonable estimate of the expenses that were going to occur for special counsel and for expert witnesses. And I think, frankly, it's conservative. If anything, we may have to come back. But I don't think that I respectfully urge you to act favorably on it so that I can do my job, and then if we need more money, we'll come back and talk to you.
Thank you.
Mr. Cooper?
Thanks, Bob. Thanks for coming tonight. Is there an opportunity to recover some of these legal fees when we go through this type of scenario where we're defending and then appealing and then defending the appeal? Is there any opportunity to recover some of those fees from, when we win?
No.
Thank you.
Ms. Baker?
Thank you very much,
I
Madam
knew
Chair.
the answer, I just wanted to.
Hold on, Heather has the floor. Okay, go ahead.
Thanks, Bob, for coming in tonight. The reason behind my supporting of the reduction was that we want clarity. I wanted clarity as to what the professional line, the professional services, what was incorporated in that. So that was my reasoning, so now we know. I have a couple of questions, I'm sorry. When you were describing the 4 cases, I was a little bit confused by what you were referencing the very first case with regard to the under the pre-zoning of 2015. Is that still an active case, or is
Yes.
that okay?
Can I explain that?
I would like you to do that.
And Council Pareka, I can tell you that I've been doing zoning work for a long time. It's confusing to me because the Attleboro Sand and Gravel people have a very good law firm, a highly regarded firm from Boston, and they are very creative in their attack here. So the first lawsuit was started before we changed the ordinance. And that lawsuit says, under the old ordinance, we can build this plant. We said, no, you can't. So that is still pending because the next case, what I call Attleboro Sand and Gravel 2, is whether or not they have the benefit of a grandfathering provision that says you're still under the pre-2015 ordinance, or you stuck with the current ordinance. Because if they're stuck with the current ordinance, then there's no point in doing the case. So that if we win Attleboro Sand and Gravel 2, then Attleboro Sand and Gravel 1 will become moot.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, because I'm no attorney, but there was a lot of language in there that kind of alluded to me that would be the trajectory.
I think it's a
in that.
very good question.
In addition to that, I would like to, I personally did not receive the memo that you prepared for the mayor with regards to all of this information. If you would be so kind as to forward that to Mr. Owens for the distribution to the council, I'd appreciate that.
Yes, of course.
I don't have that. I'd like to just have that as a point of reference in the event.
Of course,
that I'm
yeah,
getting
I'll give it to him right now.
And so then my final question is, so there are a variety of reasons, so this $50,483.22, I'm curious if we're not sure how much expert witness testimony is going to cost. There are bankruptcies that we're dealing with and other complex litigation. How did you come to, how was that figure established for the budgetary purposes?
Actually, I'm not entirely sure. I did make some recommendations to the mayor and estimates at various points in time. And I've sort of had discussions with him about some of the things we're talking about here. I think that as he was putting together the budget, I think he took the information that I gave him and came up with what he considered to be reasonable amounts to put into the FY17 budget. I can tell you now, in hindsight, looking back at it, although I didn't actually set those numbers, I think those are reasonable numbers for us to get started in FY17. I think that it's very possible that we could use all of that. So it's really more of an art than a science, because as we just talked about, if Attleboro Sand and Gravel 1 becomes moot, then I only have 3 lawsuits. But if it doesn't, then I've got 4 lawsuits. So it's very hard to estimate, but I think that was, in my judgment, a conservative estimate made by the mayor based upon his understanding of what I was up against.
Great. So perhaps maybe I could ask Madam Chair if it's possible to contact the mayor to find out how, like, what came into that calculation? Like, what figures did he use to create that? Because it's not a flat out 50 grand. That's what you're going to need, and then we can come back and ask the council for an additional appropriation. It's a very specific number of $50,483.22. So I'm very curious to see what the thought process was behind that particular figure and what the breakdown is between Attleboro Sand and Gravel, bankruptcies, and the variety of other complex litigation that would come to create this particular amount of money.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I cannot answer that, you know, why there are.
It was actually directed at the chair, so.
Okay, and as I said before, anybody sitting here can ask questions to the administration. Feel free to ask, email. He's more than any time you have a question.
If I may-
And also, I know I went up and got some questions on Public Safety Committee, other committees. Email Ken, and he'll ask, he can send it up, and then we can get a mass email back down. We can do that way too.
If I may just kind of make a small comment with regards to that, if in theory 11 counselors are doing their job, then that's 11
Yeah, and
counselors
asking
going.
questions.
But that's right. But in theory, that's 11 people contacting a department head about the very same topic. And so then, I would, if you had a question with regards to traffic and transportation, I'm more than happy to vet that information out for you, so that when we're already strapped with individuals in the city that we don't have enough employees and we're losing people and laying people off, that it might be a time. It might be something that we should be able to, as the chairperson, if I make the request.
Okay, and I'll take that into consideration, but as I said, I like to ask my own questions anyway. I don't like to ask someone else to ask my questions to make sure I get everything thoroughly out. And I know you're in City Hall, you said every day, so I know you have plenty of time, like you said before.
Right, but I don't want to overwhelm,
Yeah,
like,
just
a
email
department
Ken,
head.
we'll do a mass email, we'll get that out there, so just let Ken know you can CC everybody. Frank, did you have a question?
Thank you.
Yeah, I actually had a couple of things. I wanted to thank Bob for coming in. I also want to remind councils about a couple of things. One was that during the course of the year, it came up during the budget time, we are asked to appropriate or transfer money around, right? Kind of using Bob's words, development of the budget, it's more of an art than it is a science, right? When we vote the budget in June of every year, right, we're looking at what we expect to see spent, and what we're going to be getting for revenue. It's not like there's bags of money sitting here that we're going to be pulling out. Money's gonna be coming in during the quality real estate, for example. So it's actually at that time, we do the budget, I'm speaking as a former budget chair, as a best guess analysis of what we're going to be doing. That being said, there are things that are going to arise relative to some of the things involving, for example, Attleboro sand and gravel. Earlier this year, one of the very first things that we dealt with as a council was transferring money in to deal with some of the additional expenses. And that doesn't mean that was misestimated the previous year. It was just that, as Mr. Mangiarotti just explained, that there were other things that came about during the course of the year. The other part of it is in terms of when we work on the budget, part of the reason when we have the budget, that we have the budget hearings, is to have these people in and to ask the questions, right? And tonight, we've now heard, this is the second thing that we've heard tonight. We heard last month, one being about the crossing guards. Last month, we were dealing with, the overtime. The council had the opportunity to ask a lot of these questions. And sadly, due to a combination of attendance and other matters, at a time after we had received the Green Budget Book, there was a time to ask them these questions, and councils did not ask them. And just going forward, we need to make a point of when we're working on the budget, and the people are here before us to ask them. Instead of now going back, we've now been in committee almost an hour, dealing with an issue that was before us less than 2 months ago. So just going forward, I would just urge everybody, when we're doing the budget, I'm sorry that you find it humorous, Ms. Tarika.
I don't find it humorous.
Okay, excuse me, Mr.
But all I'm
Cook.
saying
I
is
don't
that
want
we
any back and forth.
need
Let's
to be
just-
able to take, we have the opportunity to do
thank
this
you.
at a set time. We just need to make sure we do it.
Okay, thank you. Committee, before, yes,
Excuse me, can we just,
thank Bob.
excuse Mr. Mangiarotti if we're gonna continue to have
Yeah,
this?
because I think, I've said this before, it's highly, I don't like the back and forth, the highly inappropriate comments sometimes, and the laughing and the back and forth. Mr. Cooper, did you have any questions?
I do have a question specific to this, and then one comment. I thought this was the first time we were talking about this new ask for 50,000, because I think from the budget, we cut 65,000 from that line item, if my memory and my notes serve me right. So that's just a comment. I don't need any response. I was gonna ask you something else, and it's out of my head right now, so I'll relinquish.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bob, for coming down.
Madam Chairman, I can just make one more comment that I'd like the council to consider, which is there's some degree of urgency to this appropriation. This case is ongoing. You know, I'm in the process of conducting discovery on some of these cases, and the expert witness that I have to hire sooner than later. So please attend to it at your earliest convenience, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you for coming in this evening, Kate.
Excuse me, Mr. Mangiarotti, thank you very much for being here this evening. Could you just say that one more time, that you think you're gonna win this one? I wanna hear it a couple more times.
No, I mean, the honest, I mean, this isn't always about winning and losing, but in my honest, candid opinion, I think that our boards made valid decisions that should be upheld. So, yeah, I do think we're gonna win. I wish I could guarantee that, I can't. But I've thought about it, and I've looked at it, and people in this building know that I sometimes tell them things that they don't wanna hear from me. I'll tell them they're wrong, I'll tell them you got a loser. So in this case, I applied some critical thought to what they did and asked hard questions. So I do think they're meritorious claims.
Thanks.
Is that okay?
Good luck.
Thank you, Bob, and I won't bother you during lunch when I see you out in the restaurant.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you very much. Committee, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. And the next is for H.L. Bloom Transportation Contract. Yeah, you're not on the committee. You can go.
I'm not supposed to.
Yeah. Okay, I entertain a motion to approve the second one-year renewal option to the H.L. Bloom Transportation Contract that was initially entered into on July 1st, 2012, and that was approved at the March 14th, 2016 school committee meeting. Thank you.
No, I'm not.
Do we have any further discussion? I know other councils in the past have had some discussion. So the committee, do you have any comments? Or Peter on the committee? Any for the transportation, for the renewal, one-year renewal option before I open it up to full council? No. Jeremy?
Yes, so I was in Ms. Gould's office earlier this morning.
Okay.
And this is an addendum, so this is us taking our one-year option after the contract is over. I can make copies for everyone if they want. It's all on the up and up. She said all the money was there to be transferred. The main point of it is that we are reducing our bus fleet by 2 buses. And that takes the price down, I think, about $200,000. So I spoke with Ms. Gould. She said she cannot actually sign this or do anything with it until we approve it, and then it goes to Mr. Mangiarotti. She said she sees nothing wrong with it because I was super critical of the contract last year.
Correct.
So we have to bus kids to school. Now seems like the time, so I will be supporting this, and
Thank
it
you
seems
very
in the up
much.
and up. Yeah.
That's why I was, if you're not, even if you're not on the committee, like Jeremy had some questions, feel free to discuss them within the committee. Any other comments, questions? Good. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. That is all the business that I have for the budget and appropriations. I call for an adjournment, 9:09 p.m. Thank you.
Public Works has no business this evening, but I will be having a committee meeting on Thursday.
Is there any other committees?
I do, I have business.
Okay, I just
There's
wanna,
there are 2 other committees, transportation and zoning.
And may I go, Mr.
We do 2.
Okay, I'm gonna call to order the meeting of the Committee on Zoning and Land Use at 9:10, it looks like. Okay, and I do have, make sure I've got everybody here, from my, Ms. Jackson, Mr. Cooper. Okay. So the docket matters discussed is from the docket of June 21st, 2016. I entertain a motion, and that it be ordained that the municipal council of the city of Attleboro as follows, that section 17-2.1.3, establishment of an industrial zoning district, be amended by deleting the section in its entirety and inserting in place thereof the following. The I zoning district is established to accommodate enterprises engaged in the manufacturing process of preparing, packaging, assembling, storing, merchandising of goods, commodities, and other similar uses that are deemed within the prescribed range of activities contained herein, and B, compatible non-residential enterprises engaged in the medical healthcare sector of the economy. I think this was discussed by Mr. Eurasian as to what's going on here, and something is in essence predetermined, if you would, or pre-decided when we bought that land and over near the, well, when we cleaned up the land, I guess is the best thing to do, over by the Swank building, if I'm not mistaken, okay? So, any other questions? No? Okay, go ahead and have the vote. We'll have the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any nays? No nays. All right, so that's the first one. Second, I entertain the following motion. Be it ordained that the municipal council of the city of Attleboro as follows, that in section 17-3.4, table of use regulations, community facilities be amended by deleting N associated with the following land uses under the industrial zoning district and inserting in place thereof a P as follows. Principal uses, community facilities, and I'm not gonna go through, it's mostly medical stuff, dental offices, hospital, healthcare, hospital-related, veterinary, and so forth. So, that's basically cleaning up now changing, if you would, the ordinance that we just agreed to. So, again, is there any other discussion from my committee members? Anybody else? No? Okay, so, let's see, we'll have a vote on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and so that was unanimous again, and also I do want to say and remind everybody that we did get communications that this was also a unanimous vote, a certificate of vote unanimously from the planning board. Okay, I did want to take 1 second, please indulge me. I know that we do talk about in the council here, we do recognize and honor folks that have passed, human beings. I'd like to make a comment about the Westport Farm tragedy. We give notice and remembrance to human beings, but I think it's fitting to remember all the beings that are, because we're all connected to each other. And as the so-called higher level species, we're entrusted to the humane care of these beings, and we failed them miserably in this case. This is here in our state. The ASPCA has stepped in and now to take control, rehabilitate those beings they can, and to document the criminal action for the benefit of those that suffered. I would like to just make a note and thank the people, many people of Attleboro, and I see them come across my Facebook, many people of Attleboro who have reached out and been so generous in assisting the ASPCA by providing money, food for the workers, equipment, and food and essentials for those animals that are basically hanging on to their lives. Excuse me. God knows they deserve our help, and thank you so very much. And that closes my business for the Committee on Zoning and Land Use, and I'd like to call for a meeting at the next appropriate time. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we're closing at 9:14.
I call the committee meeting for transportation and traffic to order at 9:15. I have one update and one piece of business. We had an emergency traffic study commission meeting this past Wednesday. There was some business that needed to be taken care of prior to the school year. And so I had introduced some new business with regards to adding a crosswalk at Rome Boulevard at Green Drive. I have the expectation that I will make a motion in the beginning of September to strike that business, because that is, at this moment, I believe it's no longer necessary. I do have a motion from the docket of June 21st, 2016, I move to amend section 10-4.1 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro, isolated stop signs, amended 7/23/15, by adding the following: northbound drivers on Cathedral Drive at Parsonage Way.
Second.
Thank you very much. This matter was discussed at length during the Traffic Study Commission meeting, implementing the policies and procedures that were set forth by the police chief. The Traffic Study Commission does not support this. It does not currently meet it does not meet the warrants that, again, that were set forth by the police chief, and as well as there was support from the director of DPW, who also has a say in that. So what my procedure as pertaining to stop signs, instead of just striking it, we need to make sure that there is documentation that this was brought forward. So I will make the request of my committee to vote it out for the full council, and then I'll be making a recommendation of a no vote during the full council on Thursday. Do you have any questions or concerns? I will take a vote on that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Okay. And finally, I just wanted to, this is a hot topic, especially for Mr. Cooper. I just wanted to talk very quickly. Well, the lights for Rathburn Willard at Studley, it is a slow-moving process, but from what I understand, they're coming. In addition to that, the Park Street and Oak Hill Avenue that we were talking about, we've talked about repeatedly about the insertion of a stoplight. Again, that I have assurances from the director of the DPW that they'll be painting lines and putting chevrons and things like that in there. So that is still very much a hot topic with the Traffic Study Commission, so I don't want you to think that that's fallen off.
Oh, that's good.
Okay.
You can let it fall off.
It cannot fall off, and but it is a topic that every month we ask for an update with regards to that. He's done a lot of research. He's gone out and witnessed just the traffic complexities, and we actually were joking a little bit during traffic studies, like people actually put their blinker on to keep going on the road. I go, I do that all the time, just because the individuals that are coming out of Oak Hill Ave, like I need to let them know where I'm going because they don't know where I'm going. But I just wanted to assure you that there is there's some traction and movement on those kinds of things, but it has taken a little bit of time. That being said, I am done with the traffic and transportation. I call for an adjournment.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned at 9:18.
Excuse me, fellow councilors, if you would indulge me, all committee meetings are done. I would be amiss if I didn't thank the people that participated in the East Side Playground's annual 13th year family picnic we had this year. Was successful as ever. It was heartwarming as ever. This is the 13th year we've had it. Most of the people that volunteered, that were there, our rec director, Dennis Walsh, chairman of the rec commission, Leo Johnson, commissioners Dee Larkin, Greg Bartek, Bruce Zegler, Dr. Brusso, who was on the rec commission for 30-odd years. He shows up every year and flips burgers and enjoys himself. Former Councilor Duff White was there, worked diligently from setup to closing. I'd like to thank the same people that come forward every year to donate goods, and these kids really enjoy themselves. Councilor Jackson's been there many times with the senator, and it's a great day. It's heartwarming. Louis from South Main Street Dunkin' Donuts, he pesters me to make sure that he gets the donuts in what do you call the little ones you have kids?
Donut holes.
Yeah, I call them donut holes. Dairy Carousel, another gentleman on the east side, the convenience store on South Main Street, George. He pesters me every year. What do we need this year? What can we do? The Attleboro Elks, who comes through tremendously. I think we're actually on their, when they make up their budget every year, this is something that they put in their budget. And also Nate Adams, our local disc jockey, who has volunteered 13 years. He has been there from the start to the finish. When we left that Sunday, he was still blowing bubbles. He had the hula hoops going for the kids. He makes it so enjoyable for everybody, and he's another one. When's it going to be? I don't want to book anything. He volunteers his wholeheartedly. But I wanted to thank these people because those of you who have been there and see the appreciation of the people on the east side, and I have fond remembrances from the east side. It's my part of town. It was a great day, and I want to make sure that I publicly thank these particular people. And they've been there every year for 13 years. 90% of them are there, same people, and they get the same rewards that I get out of it when I leave. So thank you all for helping. And it's a joint effort. It's not just one person. It's a joint effort. I can't thank Dennis Walsh and Leo Johnson enough for the work that they put into it. Oh, and I forgot Dell's Lemonade, one of the favorite things. And he's in North Attleboro now. Yeah, he's in North Attleboro now, and he's on board before we start with the lemonade. He's not a local vendor even anymore, and he's there. So thank you all for helping.
That's all right.
Is that for all the committee votes? You ready to go?
That neighbor was good this year. He had the hula hoops and blowing bubbles. He had put the strings on it. And used the big bucket. Look, this bubble is really huge.
Okay, I'm just waiting for any paperwork. Ms. Conley, you have a copy of your new business?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I
I'm
am
not
going.
putting that out tonight.
Okay, that's
It
fine.
doesn't have to be
Okay, so hold that.
cleared out.
You doing our motions tonight?
Yes. So I just need a copy of yours. Richard, do I have a copy of your new business?
I thought we'd do it Thursday.
Oh, no, your Thursday? Okay. That's fine. This is cool, we're gonna do your new business tonight.
Yes.
Okay. That's good to me. All right. Yeah, thank you. Okay, everybody else have to go? Okay. Call the meeting back to, the committee's back to, from committees at 9:23. Next item is the committee reports. And rather than go around, since we're gonna be doing them on Tuesday night. Anyways, I'm just gonna recognize the one committee that's actually doing business tonight, which is the budget committee.
Okay, thank you. Reporting for budget and appropriations. I am going to start with the transportation one, so we have an exemption.
Okay. For the record, show that Ms. Preker is not participating in this order of discussion, has left the chambers.
Thank you. Yes, okay. I move, from the docket of August 16th, 2016, I move to approve the second one-year renewal option to the H.L. Bloom Transportation contract that was initially entered into the July 1st, 2012, and was approved at the March 14th, 2016 school committee.
Second.
Thank you. The motion's in order. Are there any comments, please?
Thank you, yes, and thank you to Jeremy. Sometimes I call on people and then you steal my thunder with information, but you're very thorough, so thank you for sharing the information. And as Jeremy said, just to reiterate, it will go down about $2,000, and I think 2 vans, I think we said?
2 buses and
2 buses.
200,000.
Okay,
Yeah.
200,000, I'm sorry. So thank you for sharing that information, and that's always nice that other people are doing their homework and sharing information, so thank you so much. And that's all the questions and comments, whatever I have this evening.
Okay, are there any other concerns or comments? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote, beginning with Councilor Blair.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
No.
Ms. Hegney?
Yes.
Vice President Denley?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
President Cook?
Yes,
9 yeas, 1 nay.
motion passes.
Thank you. The next is
Hold it, second.
from July 21st, 2016. Are you all set,
Yeah.
Amanda?
Yeah, I'm just waiting for Ms. Parika to get back.
It's a long paragraph, so. From the docket of July 21st, 2016, I move to approve the mayor's request for supplemental appropriation in the amount of $50,483.22 to account citywide professional services to allow the city to adequately defend itself against an attempt to build an asphalt plant off Tiffany and County Street, which affects countless constituents throughout the city, as well as to enable the city solicitor to deal with bankruptcies and other complex litigation that requires additional assistance in defending the city.
Second.
Thank you. The motion is in order. Are there any comments, please?
Yes, we just had an at-length discussion with City Solicitor Bob Mangiarotti, where every counselor had the opportunity to ask questions or present any information to Bob to get more clarification on. And this is something that is not just the asphalt plant off Tiffany, as he said, but complex litigation for bankruptcy, the tax collector. And I support this, not just as the Ward 6 counselor, which represents the area of Tiffany Street, but also as a resident of Attleboro, for every resident. So this is something I do strongly support.
Okay, thank you. Any other concerns or comments? Council Parika?
Thank you, President Cook. So
Welcome.
I will be supporting the request. I very much appreciated him coming down and explaining to us the intricacies of the litigation with regards to that. And in addition to that, it's not, these funds aren't just for Attleboro Sand and Gravel. They're for a variety of other things that Mr. Mangiarotti is doing. I think it's helpful to the council to be able to have that, open discussion in front of the cameras so that, people at home understand a little better about what's going on. They hear about that we're being sued, constituents call me, like, Heather, what do you know about it? So I think that having Mr. Mangiarotti come down, or even going into executive session on occasion with him to give us an update as to what the circumstances are or what the situation is with a variety of lawsuits with regards to the city would be extremely helpful. And I appreciated his candor, and I appreciated his willingness to answer any questions. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other concerns or comments? Council Conti?
Yes, Mr. President, I think that the best part of Mr. Mangiarotti coming to the council chambers is that the public gets to hear the details on the 4 lawsuits. One thing that was said, though, that triggers my caution is that Mr. Mangiarotti did not come up with this $50,000 budget. He basically outlined to the mayor what he thought he might need, and the mayor set the $50,000 fee, which Mr. Mangiarotti thought was reasonable. So I'll make a motion to amend the motion from $50,000 to $40,000.
Is there a second? Is there a second? Okay. So it appears there's not a second, so we're back to the original motion. Any other comments on the original motion? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote, beginning with Councilor Delicio.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mrs. Parika?
Yes.
Vice President Denley?
No.
Ms. Hegney?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
President Cook?
Yes,
9 yeas, 1 nay.
motion passes.
Thank you, I was just happy, I lost myself for a moment. I don't mean happy about the lawsuit, that the people are the residents, so I do apologize, I forgot where I was. That is all the business I have for budget and appropriations, and call for committee meeting at the next appropriate time. Thank you.
Okay, there's no old business, there are 2 items of new business. I recognize Mr. Cooper, please.
Thank you. From the docket of September 6, 2016, I move to refer the following item to the appropriate committee for further study and recommendation. That Section 13-6 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro relative to the personnel rules and regulations for employees not covered by collective bargaining agreements, exempt employees, be reviewed, and that revisions, updates, or changes be made as appropriate.
Second.
document. It's been a while since it's been reviewed. I did talk to Owen about it. It hasn't been reviewed since he's been here, and I thought it was an opportunity, being new on the Personnel and Human Services, to bring this to the next meeting and talk with the board about any revisions that he, or we think are appropriate to be added to this. And I think, whatever committee you choose to assign it to, which I hope is this one, I will commit to do all of those things. So, thank you very much. That concludes my comments.
Any other concerns or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor? Oh, excuse me.
Thank you.
Yes.
I just want to say thank you, and that's why it's good to have a different perspective when we change chairpersons, and I'll support this to bring in. So thank you.
Any other concerns or comments? Hearing none, this matter requires a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passed. I'm going to refer that to the Personnel and Human Services Committee.
Thank you. Secondly, from the docket of September 6, 2016, I move to refer the following item to the appropriate committee for further study and recommendation, that Section 5-1.2 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro, Powers and Duties, amended 4/3/2008, be amended by deleting that section in its entirety and replacing it with the following. The Board of Assessors shall assess taxes and estimate the value of property for the purpose of taxation. The Board of Assessors shall have all the powers and duties now from time to time vested by general law or special act in Board of Assessors. The Chief Assessor, under the administrative direction of the Mayor, do not include assessing property, shall be the administrative head of the Assessors Department, and shall assist the Board of Assessors in estimating the value of real and personal estate and in the performances of such other duties as the assessors require.
Second.
Thank you. The motion's in order. Are there any comments?
Yes, those that were here in 2007 remember that there was a change, February 6, 2007, on a 10 yea, 1 nay vote to pass to change the oversight of the chief assessor from the Board of Assessors to the mayor. Then again, those were here April 3rd, 2008. There was a change made to go back to oversight to the Board of, give that oversight back to the Board of Assessors. That passed on a 6-5 vote. And given the local news and allegations that we've all probably received phone calls and certainly seen, something needs to be done. If it's not the mayor, I'm open to discussion, and I think that's why it's important to bring these things forward. And again, I will just remind everyone that what we heard were allegations, and I did have a lengthy discussion with the chairman of the Board of Assessors, and he is willing to come discuss with and to the committee that this gets assigned to, his perspective on this change. And so I think that it's important that we just vet this through the council and see where we land.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other additional comments? Councilor Hall.
I have a request, if I might, that when this discussion does come down, fully vet it. Tell us why the change was made. If you can, tell us what was the rationale for changing it back. I'd like to know all that history. The other thing I would like, if you please would, since you are talking about moving this position back down under the mayor, please have a discussion with the mayor prior to the decision. I would appreciate that.
Councilor Cooper?
If I may, of course, whomever the chair of the committee that this gets assigned to would do that. And this is all the information that I read so far about why these changes were made, and it's not easy to try to track because former councilors did not do a great job of taking minutes, quite frankly, and so it is not easy to try to figure out exactly why or where or through what communication. For example, there was a communication back in 2006 from Jan Silverman, but none of the backup material from that communication we can find. So it's difficult to track exactly what happened and what the impetus was, but the mayor may be able to have that, and in an effort to be completely removed from the situation as a counselor and someone who had respect and admiration for the person that has been accused, I think that I needed to completely remove myself and do what the constituents asked me to do and put something forward to protect the taxpayers from the allegations that were put forward. So I can't control the person that, the person that this gets assigned to, other than to put my influence forward through asking questions like I'm sure you will do. But there was a lot of debate, and I deliberately did not speak to the chief assessor, and I deliberately did not speak to the mayor about this. I spoke to the personnel director, and I spoke to the president of the council, and I deliberately did not speak to the news media as well. So those were very deliberate and calculated things that I did in order to bring this forward in a very transparent and uninfluenced manner.
And I appreciate that, so whoever this does get assigned to, now that's, you know, our difficulty that I feel that we've had in the past is that we have discussions about things without fully understanding the impact. So I very much appreciate that we've had this conversation open to everybody, so that whoever does get assigned, you'll know the expectations, at least this council will have, when this comes front. Thank you so much.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other concerns or comments? I do want to thank Council Cooper for professional way he's been handling this point. I appreciate the conversations that we've had on this also. So if there's no other discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion passes. I want to refer that to the Ordinances, Elections, and Legislative Matters Committee. And, let's see, another thing. Okay. I just want to mention that on Thursday night, just a reminder, I'm going to confirm this, that the Big Read people are scheduled to come in for their annual meeting, and the annual presentation to us, and it is technically going to be on Thursday. So my thought process for Thursday night is that there are no public hearings that are scheduled, that some of the committees voted some of the stuff out tonight, so those are already taken care of. So my thought is that on Thursday night, we'll open up with the Big Read. I'm not sure if there's any communication, but if there is, you know, we will deal with any of that stuff. And then we'll break for the rest of the committee meetings, then come back and do the committee reports. So that'll be the plan for Thursday night. So I hope you're all enjoying the summer, and I want to thank you for your efforts tonight. Entertain a motion to adjourn. Second motion to order. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, excuse me.
Excuse me. I just want to ask a question.
Yes.
Can some of us start our meetings a little bit earlier on Thursday, since it's summer and like?
I
we
think
can
they already
post
were
it now?
posted at 7 o'clock though.
Can't you post them on, can't we change that?
Usually they're posted 48 hours in advance. That's my only concern. For the open meeting law.
Next
Well,
year.
remember that next year.
Next year.
All right, so again, the motion on the floor is to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Yeah.
Motion passed. We're adjourned at 9:38. Thank you very much.